Hi, this is Pastor Scott from Calvary Chapel, Buena Park. Our desire is to teach the Word of God simply. I pray that you will be blessed by the teaching of God's Word. If you are in the Southern California area, we would love for you to come out and join us for our services. Our address is 7430 Orangethorpe Avenue in Buena Park, 90621. Our service times are 9 a.m. Sunday morning, 7 p.m. Wednesday evening. You could also contact us on our phone at 714-676-0258. God bless you. Okay, so we have been following the life of Jacob. Anybody remember what Jacob means?
Usurper.
Heel catcher, usurper, both are correct. He was such a scoundrel. He was born second, but while Esau was being born, Jacob grabbed Esau's foot to try and be first. Playing King of the Hill backwards. Just trying to pull him down the hill so he can get up on top. And what does Esau mean? Anybody remember?
Hairy.
Hairy or red. And so he was red and hairy both. Yeah. And so Jacob had to leave home because he had first bought his brother Esau's birthright. He was out hunting, and he comes back and he's so famished he needs to eat now. Has anybody here ever been so hungry that you're dizzy and you're weak, and it's like, I have to eat now? Anybody experience that?
Yep.
Not too often.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, look at me. I've been hungry many times. But if you're so hungry that you're feeling like that, did any of you ever, when you were that hungry, feel that you were this close to death? I better eat before I pass out, but not, oh, I'm going to die. Right? And so Esau comes in and says, give me some of that porridge that you're making. And he says, I'll give it to you for your birthright. And Esau says, what's my birthright to me? I'm about to die. I'm about to die. Oh, drama. Melodramatic. Oh, give it to me. I'm about to... Okay. For your birthright, I'll give it to you. Oh, yes, I need it. And he eats it. And just the way the chapter reads, he finished eating, wiped his mouth, got up and left. It was just like, it was nothing. Not a big deal. He didn't even consider what he did. He sold his birthright. Well, Isaac, their dad, was getting old. How old was he? He was pretty old. But how long did he live? Well, we're going to find out that Jacob left home for about 20 years, running from his brother, and he came back and Isaac was still alive. But Isaac tells Esau, I don't know how long I'm going to live, I want to bless you. I want to give you your blessing. You're the oldest son. I want to give you your blessing. And Rebekah, his mom, hears this, and we already read that Rebekah loved Jacob more, and Isaac loved Esau more. This is not a good way to build a strong family. Having favorites. I'm lucky. I have a favorite son and a favorite daughter. It works for me.
Yes.
But we can't play favorites. Isaac and Rebekah did, and it was a disaster. So Rebekah goes and tells Jacob, hey, your dad is going to bless your brother. You need to get in on this, and you need to get this for yourself. He's going to go hunting, but while he's hunting, you just need to go to the pen and get a goat. And I'm going to prepare it the way Esau prepares his game, and I'm going to give it to your dad, and he's going to eat it. So now it's mom against dad, pitting each other against each other. In my home, now, thankfully we didn't have to deal with this too much, but in my home, we had a rule. You know that game where you go to mom and you ask mom for permission to do something? And she says, no. Hey, Dad. You know that game, right? In my house, that was understood to be a spanking offense. Because now what you're doing is, in the kid's mind, they're just trying to get what they want. But in the bigger picture, what they're doing is they're pitting mom against dad. That doesn't get to happen in our home. Well, it's happening in the home of Jacob and Esau. But it's not the kids doing it, it's the parents establishing it, creating that. Isaac was going to bless his son Esau. Rebekah, Isaac's wife, hears this and goes to tell the other son, Jacob, this was happening. And go get the goats and I'll prepare it. So somehow, Rebekah was such a good cook. What do most cooks try to do with game? Cook the gaminess out, right? Well, she was able to cook the gaminess in to these goats. Jacob comes to Isaac and says, here I am, Esau. You don't sound like Esau. You sound like Jacob. He was blind by this time. Come here and let me feel your arms. So he feels his arms and the back of his neck, and they put goat skin on him. How hairy was he? He was as hairy as a goat. That's hairy. The coarse hair of an animal. Shave your arms, dude. So anyway, he feels him. He says, you don't sound right, but you feel like him. And he smells his clothes, and Rebekah went and got Esau's clothes to put on Jacob, so he smelt like a field. So no fewer than 2 times did Isaac question whether Jacob was telling the truth. And Rebekah already considered what the objections would be and took care of those objections. One thing that happens in conflict, in physical conflict, is you want to know what the other person is going to do before they do it. That way you can defend it. And Rebekah did that, anticipating what Isaac was going to think. And who would know Isaac better than Rebekah, his wife? And so she is lying, cheating, and manipulating. It turns out that she is the sister of Laban. Laban is who Jacob will meet when he goes to the city of Padan Aram. He goes there because 2 reasons. One is after he tricks Esau out of the blessing. See, he sold the birthright, but he was tricked and manipulated out of the blessing. 2 separate things. After he stole the blessing, Esau was going to kill Jacob. So Jacob had to run for his life. And it's amazing how this happened. If you really think about this, whose idea was it for Jacob to get Esau's blessing? It was Rebekah's. Rebekah went to him. They put together this plan. She devised this plan for Jacob to get Esau's blessing. Because Esau had to hunt, Jacob only had to go to the pen. It only took him a few minutes to get the animal that it took hours and hours for Esau to get. It was very easy for him to have the food on the table first. But as soon as he left the room after Isaac ate the food, it was clear that everybody would know what Jacob did. He tricked him. There's no hiding that. Esau's coming back with a plate of food. There's no hiding that. But whose idea was it? Rebekah, and she came out smelling like a rose. It was her idea, and Jacob had to take all the heat for it. And then he had to run for his life, number one. Number two, they didn't want him to have a wife from that area. That was Canaan. That was the land that was not worshiping their God. That was a land that was worshiping idols. So he goes to Padan Aram. He meets Rachel, at the well. She runs and gets her daddy Laban and says, "Your nephew's here, Rebekah's son." He comes out, "Come and stay with us." He stayed with them for 30 days. He worked there for 30 days. How great a thing would that be, that you got to watch somebody work for 30 days before you hire him? Work for me for free for 1 month and I'll see your work ethic. That'd be a great interview process, right? Well, it'd be great for the employer, not so much for the employee. Man, I got to work hard for 30 whole days? And without pay. And so he says, you shouldn't be working for me for nothing, your family. Name your wages. Well, I love Rachel. Let me marry Rachel. I'll work for her for 7 years. Okay, done. And we all know the story. After 7 years, he goes into the tent. They consummate the wedding. It's dark. Sunrise, he wakes up. He says, "Ah! Who are you?" What a horrible thing to wake up to. This is not what I signed up for. And then Laban says, "I'm such a good guy, I'll let you marry my other daughter." How good a guy is that?
That's a shifty guy.
That's a shifty guy. Not only did he trick Jacob, but he treated his daughters as nothing more than possessions. My daughter needs to be able to look at me and know that no matter what happens, she can trust me. That is not a loving father. That is not the actions of a loving father. That's horrific. And so, the scene is set, the die is cast, and now we look at the fact that here's this family in torment. So we pick it up in Genesis 29, verse 31. So we know that he worked 7 years for Rachel, but he got Leah. And then he ended up, Leah, I'm thinking of Star Wars. Then he got Leah. And then he had to work another 7 years to get Rachel. And so he has Leah as his first wife that he didn't even love. But he's, in essence, stuck with her. Because Laban let him know, well, we don't marry our second daughters before the first daughters. So we pick it up in 31. When the Lord saw that Leah was unloved, he opened her womb, but Rachel was barren. So Leah conceived and bore a son, and she called his name Reuben. And it turns out that Reuben means, in Hebrew, behold, a son.
Wow, imagine that.
Yeah. So she has the son Reuben. And we are told by the scriptures that God saw that Leah was unloved. And so he wanted to bless her by letting her have a child. She didn't have anything in the marriage, but she gets a child. Do you remember? We talked about this on Tuesday. When Hannah in 1 Samuel, she couldn't have a baby, and she was all depressed. And her husband says, "Hey, you have me. Aren't I as good as 10 sons?" No. She didn't say that, but that's the implied answer. No, you are not. I mean, look at you. You're a disappointment. Yeah. If we answer that way, then we are a disappointment.
That's Scotty's paraphrase.
That is Scotty's paraphrase, yes. Thank you. Verse 33. Then she conceived again and bore a son, and said, because the Lord has heard that I am unloved, He has therefore given me this son also. And she called his name Simeon. So this time, the first time it says because God saw. This time it's she said that the Lord heard me. And perhaps that is exactly what happened. She's crying out, she's unloved, and so now she has a second son, Simeon, and Simeon means hearing. The Lord heard, so she named her son after the Lord hearing her plight. Verse 34. She conceived again and bore a son and said, now this time, oh, this is sad. Now this time my husband will become attached to me because I have borne him 3 sons. Therefore his name was called Levi. And Levi means adhesion. And do you see what's going on here? She was unloved, so she had, behold, a son. And then she kept crying out to the Lord, and the Lord heard her. So now she has, he hears, and now she's looking for a reason for Honey to grow to love her. She knows that she's not loved. And now she has a 3rd son. And we see this sometimes in our culture, where it's often called the 7-month baby, where a lady finds out that she's pregnant. Okay, I better get married to him. And they have their baby 7 months into the wedding. Well, we know what happened. Praise God, they made it right. But sometimes it's done for the purpose of, well, if I have his baby, then I'll have him. And I think many women have been single moms thinking that child would draw him in, but it didn't. A baby will sometimes make a man become a man and lead the home. Oftentimes, it makes him into a child and he runs away from his responsibility. But now she's thinking, well, this will keep him close. So she has adhesion, Levi. And then 35. And she conceived again and bore a son and said, now I will praise the Lord. Therefore she called his name Judah. Then she stopped bearing. Well, things look better now. I'm going to praise God because I had this child. The first 3 were all about being unloved, God hearing, and trying to keep her man. This 4th one, now she's going to praise God that she has a son. What does Judah mean?
Right.
Very good.
Well, I looked at my notes.
Oh. No matter how you got the answer, you got the answer. And Judah means praise. So now she's praising God. It sounds like, or it looks like, things are looking up. She is praising God for the right reasons. She has a 4th son. We're going to find out it's not quite that simple. Go to chapter 30, verse 1. Now when Rachel saw that she bore Jacob no children, Rachel envied her sister and said to Jacob, give me children or else I die.
Ouch.
Yeah. And Jacob's anger was aroused against Rachel, and he said, am I in the place of God, who has withheld from you the fruit of your womb? On one hand, I understand Jacob's anger. Don't put this on me. I can't take this pressure. It's not my fault. I didn't do it. But on the other hand, he probably could have answered her a whole lot better than this. Sometimes, in desperation, a wife can cry out in what sounds like anger or accusation or fear coming off as aggression, and that's not what it is at all. He could have just stopped to listen to her. A hug probably would have been good about them. But instead, he kind of lashes back. He's right in that it's not his job to decide who does and who does not have a child. But he was wrong in how he spoke to his wife. So, this is where we can often make a mistake. Here's Rachel, the chosen wife, the wife that Jacob wanted. And there is Leah, who was basically forced upon this man that really doesn't want her. And she has now 4 sons. Now, obviously, this has taken at least 4 years up until this point. Sounds like, oh, she just had a baby after a baby. Obviously it doesn't work that way. But she has 4 children now. And here's Rachel, the one who's loved, is now looking at the outward circumstance of her sister. What's the outward circumstance? She has 4 kids. What a blessing. What's the inward circumstance?
Jealousy.
Jealousy. She's in the family, but she's not wanted. She's not loved. And Rachel, the one who's loved, is forgetting about what's happening on her inside. And that is that her husband loves her, but she's comparing her inside with somebody's outside. Anytime we look at somebody else and what God is doing with them, and we see what's going on the outside, and we think that because we see what's going on the outside that we know what's going on the inside, we're confused. We can't compare what we see in others with what's going on the inside with us. That's when we start getting jealous. That's when we start wishing that we were in that person's position. Rachel wanted to be in Leah's position, but Leah didn't want to be in Leah's position. She was judging by the outward. We can't judge somebody's outward and wish that outward upon ourselves. We think that they look successful. We think that it looks like that what they're doing is working, but it might not be working at all. We have no way to tell that. But we're comparing ourselves to that. So now here's Rachel saying, give me children. Jacob's like, whoa, hey, back up. I can't do that for you. I can't do that part for you. That's not up to me. But my sister has 4. Yeah, but you don't know the whole story. You know what makes God such a good judge? All those things that you and I don't know about others, He knows. All those blind spots that we have, He doesn't have any blind spots. He knows the whole context. So when I see somebody who looks like they have it together, when I see somebody who looks like they're doing well, maybe they are. There's a good chance that they're embellishing their situation and they're not doing as good as they want. Because one thing that we do with ourselves is just natural. I don't want to appear broken and falling apart in front of everybody. So I'm going to do my best to hold it together. Hey, you look like you're doing great. Yeah, I'm doing awesome. I don't know if you only knew. But we internalize that and we try to make people see what we want them to see. People only know about you what you want them to know about you. Right? I mean, that's what's going on with all these politicians. Something is found out about somebody. It's like, no, you're not supposed to know that. And then something is outed about them. It's like, that doesn't fit my narrative. I don't want to deal with that. We have a narrative about ourselves. But Rachel was comparing herself in a way that can't be compared. We have to be careful not to do that. That's why it's so important that we know who we are in Jesus Christ. I am not as concerned with self-esteem as I am with what I call God esteem. How does God esteem you?
Your son.
I'm going to use this over and over because I think it's a good analogy. When we go to a car lot or any place else that's selling product, it's for sale. There's a price tag on it. Does that price tag tell you how much that's worth? No, it tells you how much they want for it. How do you know what it's worth? What will somebody spend on it? That's how you know what it's worth, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, when we were slaves to sin, we were on the auction block being sold as slaves. That's the picture that's given in the book of Ephesians. We were slaves for sale. And God came along and He bought us. We now belong to Him. We are His slaves to serve Him. But what did He purchase you with?
Your son.
The blood of His Son. The precious blood of His Son. Tell me this. How much do you think you're worth to Him? He paid everything for you. How much do you think you're worth to Him?
Unmeasurable.
Unmeasurable. We need to stop having self-esteem and start having God-esteem. I'm not who you say I am. I'm not even who I say I am. I'm who Jesus says that I am. And I belong to Him. I was purchased by Him. I was adopted into His family because He loves me that much. That's what I need to compare myself to. The fact that Jesus loved me into the kingdom. That's what matters. So, keep these two things in mind. We cannot judge how someone is doing on the inside by looking at their outside. And two, we need to look to God to satisfy us, not our outward situation to satisfy us. Go to verse 3, please. So she said, still speaking of Rachel, so she said, "Here is my maid Bilhah. Go into her, and she will bear a child on my knees, that I also may have children by her." Then she gave him Bilhah, her maid, as a wife, and Jacob went into her. And Bilhah conceived and bore Jacob a son. Then Rachel said, "God has judged my case. He has also heard my voice and given me a son." Therefore she called his name Dan. So in need of comparing herself to Leah, so desperate to be satisfied on the outside rather than on the inside, she does the unthinkable. Remember, Bilhah was just a maid that belonged to her dad Laban. When she got married to Jacob, Laban gave her this maid to go along with them. She was a servant. She was there to serve Leah. She was a maid. And so Rachel, excuse me, I said Leah, I meant Rachel. But here's Rachel not having any children yet. She's barren, and she sees her older sister having 4, and she says, "Take this woman and have children with her, because she's my maid. They'll essentially be my children." Don't they know their own family history? This is what Grandpa did. Remember when God promised Abraham a son, and they couldn't? Sarah thought, well, they can't have one. Why? Well, God promised Abraham a son. It had been 10 whole years. Here, we got to help God out. The old man just forgot about his promise, and he's just not powerful enough to do this. So we got to come alongside God and help him. When is it a good time to help God? Never. It never ends well. And so they have Ishmael, and as soon as I can't remember her name. Hagar, thank you. As soon as Hagar conceived, Sarah turns to Abraham and says, my wrong be upon you. It was my idea, but now it's your fault and I'm putting it on you. As we just discussed before, sounds like she's bitter, but she's absolutely correct. That was the perfect time for Abraham to stand up, be the man, be the leader, and say, no, God made me a promise. We're going to trust God on this one. And so they had Ishmael. And it took another 15 years for them to have Isaac. Because Isaac was born 25 years after the promise. Sometimes when God makes a promise, we have to wait for that promise to be fulfilled. That's when our character is either developed or destroyed. Has God made you a promise? And so now, although God didn't make Jacob a specific promise about a son being born, that was a perfect time for him to say, no, you're my wife, Bilhah is not. We're not going to do that. But he doesn't. And so, sorry ladies, sometimes as men, the worst thing we can do is just give in to the pressure of the wife. I mean, who wants to sleep on the couch, right? Who wants to be in trouble?
Not me.
I don't either. But I think that's the motivation sometimes behind men not leading. And I'm fortunate that I have a wife that loves me, loves the Lord more than she loves me. And she's more concerned with following the Lord. She is a woman, and she has her desires and her wants, but she's going to submit those to the Lord, and I'm grateful for that. But who knows that leadership can be difficult? It's hard. If it was easy, everybody would do it, right?
Yeah.
Well, every man is supposed to do it. That's what we're called to. Yeah. And so there comes a time we need to just man up and be men, suffer the consequences that come. There's a cost to leadership. There's a price to pay for leadership. But you have to pay those prices. And sometimes men want to just take the easy way out, and it's not the easy way in the long run. So, Dan means a judge. Do you look at your notes again, Dave?
Yeah, I'm cheating again.
That's okay. I looked at my notes too. Verse 7. And Rachel's maid Bilhah conceived again and bore Jacob a second son. Then Rachel said, with great wrestlings I have wrestled with my sister, and indeed I have prevailed. So she called him Naphtali. And Naphtali means my wrestling. But look at this. This is Bilhah's son, but Rachel's claiming him as his own, as her own. Yeah, we need to keep a clear understanding of who's in charge. Last I knew, it was the Lord. We got to follow him. Verse 9. When Leah saw that she had stopped bearing, she took Zilpah, her maid, and gave her to Jacob as wife. So now Leah gets in on this and says, okay, personally me, I know that one wife is enough. Thank you very much. Jacob is up to 2 wives and 2 concubines. A concubine is basically just a wife without full privileges. She's just there to make babies. And that's exactly what Bilhah and Zilpah are there for. So Leah gets in on it. She already has 4 kids. But she can't get over the whole competition thing either. Take my handmaid. This is not what we call family planning. This is just not right.
You think?
Yes, I think.
This is like a sitcom or something.
It's terrible. In reality, in many places of the Bible, it's just not, you wouldn't find this on the family movie section. You know, this is not G-rated. So when Leah saw that she had stopped bearing, she took Zilpah her maid and gave her to Jacob as wife. And Leah's maid Zilpah bore Jacob a son. Then Leah said, a troop comes. And she called his name Gad. Or if you were my grandma, she would say Egads. Egads. But Gad means fortune or luck. I got lucky. But this is just striving for position and power and strength and being the best. This has nothing to do with love. There's no love in this. What do they want? What do they want? We want kids. When do we want them? Now. No. What they're looking for is they want to win. How many people get involved in what they're doing just because they want the win? There's no relationship here. Marriage is supposed to be about love, about building a family together, about being united together, being one, seeking and serving God as one unit. They are anything but one unit. They just want to win. They could care less about, it seems like they could care less about these sons. They're just numbers. I got more numbers than you. I got the attention of my husband, who's also your husband, who's also her husband and her husband. What? Too many. And Leah's did I tell you what oh yeah, fortune or luck. Okay, verse 12. And Leah's maid Zilpah bore Jacob a second son. Then Leah said, I am happy, for the daughters will call me blessed. So she called his name Asher. And Asher means happy. You see this? You see what's going to make her happy? She's not happy that she got another son. She's not happy that her family's growing. She's not happy that she gets to share this child with her son and have the privilege of raising him in the Lord and teaching him values and character and instilling God's word into him. No, what is she happy about?
Numbers.
Those other people that I don't even know are going to call me blessed. What? Why am I trying to impress somebody I don't even know? Why am I trying to impress somebody who doesn't even care about me? But now this one is going to make them think that I'm great. Makes no sense. Their focus is all wrong. Verse 14. Now, Reuben, okay, who remembers Reuben?
Who's first?
Yes. What did Reuben mean? Boy, but it means more than that. Behold, a son. So here's, behold, a son. Now he's getting in on the action. How old is he? We don't know, but he's at least old enough to get involved in this. Why on earth would a kid get involved in this? Now Reuben, verse 14, went in the days of wheat harvest and found mandrakes in the field. And brought them to his mother Leah. Then Rachel said to Leah, please give me some of your son's mandrakes. So I don't know how old Reuben is, but he's old enough to go out into the field and pick mandrakes. Does he even know what mandrakes are? I don't know. Son, you're not old enough to know what mandrakes are. No, we'll have that discussion when you're older. We went down to Orange County Rescue Mission, what, about 3-4 years ago? And we took a tour of the place and donated some stuff there. It's a pretty cool facility, and they had a plant there that was mandrakes. And can I be honest with you right now? I'm uncomfortable talking about mandrakes. Okay? It's not good for mixed audience. But mandrakes are also known in the region as love apples. I feel like sending you into the other room. Mandrakes are eaten so that you can have an effect that makes you want to be with your spouse. Can I call it that? Is that fair enough? Okay. And it's thought to even have some
Health benefits?
well, it'll help you become fertile. And so, what in the world is Reuben doing picking mandrakes for mom? He shouldn't be there. And so, Rachel says, give me some of your son's mandrake. And this is where we find Leah's heart. Verse 15. But she said to her, is it a small matter that you have taken away my husband? Remember, Leah was married to Jacob first. Even though Rachel was the one he really wanted, Leah was married to him first. She says, is it a small matter you already took my husband from me? Would you take away my son's mandrakes also? And Rachel said, therefore, he will lie with you tonight for your son's mandrakes. So they are competing for who gets his affection that night. Ladies, don't ever be in a relationship like that. If there's a relationship like that, just get out. Get out. Get out. Don't ever be in that type of relationship. When Jacob came out of the field in the evening, Leah went out to meet him and said, you must come in to me, for I have surely hired you with my son's mandrakes. And he lay with her that night. So this relationship has nothing to do with love and has become nothing more than a business transaction. I've hired you for tonight. God listened to Leah, and she conceived and bore Jacob a fifth son. Leah said, God has given me my wages because I have given my maid to my husband. So she called his name Issachar. Issachar means hired. That pretty much wraps up what their whole marriage was. Then Leah conceived again and bore Jacob a sixth son. And Leah said, God has endowed me with a good endowment. Now my husband will dwell with me. What? 6 boys. Now my husband will dwell with me. She's still trying to win the love of her husband through having children. Now my husband will dwell with me, because I have borne him 6 sons. So she called his name Zebulun. And Zebulun means dwelling. Afterwards, she bore a daughter and called her name Dinah. And we'll hear more about Dinah later. We go on to verse 22. Then God remembered Rachel, and God listened to her and opened her womb, and she conceived and bore a son, and said, God has taken away my reproach. So she called his name Joseph and said, the Lord shall add to me another son. And Joseph means remover or increaser. And this is interesting because it's Joseph who ends up going to prison, being sold by his brothers because they envy him.
They don't like him.
They don't like him. Let's just continue this whole thing of picking favorites and having a broken family and have 10 of your sons sell you as a slave. And then he is, he's such a good slave, he ends up being in charge of Potiphar's house. And then Potiphar's wife tries to lay with him, just a young kid, but he stays faithful to the Lord. So out of spite, because he wouldn't lay with her, as she grabbed him to lay with him, he runs off, leaves his coat. Just run, just get out of there. But then holding her coat, she says to Potiphar, he tried to rape me. But when I screamed, the other workers came in and he ran. That's why I have his coat. And he got thrown in prison. And then that's when Pharaoh had dreams and scared him. And they called him in because he had already interpreted other dreams. And he ended up being second in command in Egypt, only under Pharaoh. Why was he second in command? Because he was an increaser. Fits his namesake. He increased the grain and made Pharaoh extremely wealthy in doing it. And he's not mentioned here yet. We won't get to him until I think it's chapter 35. But Rachel will have another son. Anybody know what her other son is named? Benjamin. And unfortunately, she dies while delivering him. She dies in childbirth. She never got to enjoy her second son. But you see that it says in verse 23, and she conceived and bore a son and said, God has taken away my reproach. Again, she's concerned with how other people view her. She finally had her own child. Though she was happy having children through Bilhah, she knew it wasn't the same thing. So when she finally had her own, she said, God has seen my reproach. Now maybe I am justified. Maybe I am taken seriously. A lot of times, people are unhappy so they don't feel validated. Perhaps she felt validated by having a son. That's not the validation she needed, is it? Having a son is a blessing for sure. Having a daughter is a blessing for sure. But the validation, again, it comes from the Lord. It comes from the relationship that we have with Him. That's what validates us, not what other people think of me. I call it a superpower. I don't care what others think of me. It's okay. I mean, I have the people that I love, and those are the ones that I care about. But the stranger who I'm trying to impress, I don't care what they think of me. It's okay if they don't like me. I don't have to be liked by that person that doesn't know my name. That's okay. I'm not validated by something happens on the outward. I'm validated by the character that God has created in me. And hopefully we can live out that character, because that's what really matters, our character. We see what has happened to Rachel and Leah because of the twisted actions of their father. Now they are married to the same man. They're competing for his love, but at the same time, they're trying to save face with the community and even each other. They are claiming little victories here and there, but the truth is, there is no victory. They are empty and angry at each other. They are trying to win love, doing things that may look like love to the world, but is devoid of real love and affection. Never try and compare the world's love to God's love. That love that we find in the tabloids, that love that we find in the news, that love that we find in the lives of movie stars and TV stars, there's very few of them that actually have love. And you find those few that stick with their spouses for years when they're sick and they treat them well, but that's few and far between. It's all about there's two people in one house that when they go on set, they're doted upon, and everybody brings them everything as the greatest thing they ever lived. Then they get at home, and they're just another husband and wife, wanting their spouse to treat them the way they're being treated on set. But you don't treat me that way. No, you don't. I'm not going to treat you that way. They treat me that way. You're supposed to treat me. Instead, we love one another. We serve one another. Even when we have what we call intense fellowship, and sometimes we argue, or whatever the case is, through all of it, we still love each other. And through all of it, we still serve one another to show the love that we have for one another. Even when we're upset. Because that love doesn't go away, because the love is real. If the love is superficial and it's all based on what you do for me, well, you better do more for me, because I'm not feeling it right now. Come on, do some more. I need it. I need more. Just keep it coming. Well, what we should be doing is pouring more out to each other. So listen, what we do as fathers has real consequences. What we do as husbands has real consequences. And how we treat our families has more at stake than just about anything else we do. I can be successful in the eyes of the world, but if I lose my family, I've accomplished nothing. Accomplished nothing. It's all about my family. It's all about the Lord and my family. Ministry is down on the list from that. It's about the Lord and my family. If I lose them, I've accomplished nothing. Lord, help us to know where your love for us lies. Help us to know that it's in you that we're secure, not in other people. And as much as we love each other, we can't fulfill each other. That fulfillment only comes from you. So help us, Lord, to understand that. Help us to reach to you. And help us to not ever compare somebody else's outward experience with how we feel. Because we don't actually know what they're going through or how they're feeling. Help us to be secure in you, be fulfilled by you, and to follow you. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen.